doesn't get any better than eating fresh out of your garden. But that's not always reality. Because what happens when you suddenly need to harvest pounds of kale before the heat wave that the forecast is warning you about? Or because you overplanted tomatoes and all of them are ripe and ready to eat? Or because you have cut and come again crops like herbs or broccoli that truly do require you to harvest on a consistent basis? Now, I can almost certainly assure you that my growing space is smaller than yours. And that's because I live in a townhouse and my only growing space is a deck. Now, honey, don't feel bad for me. It's a minor detail that I've worked around by using 5 GreenStalk vertical planters. And that's how I maintain the over 150 crops that I've got growing out there. My production rivals those with in-the-ground garden beds. So in today's video, I'm taking you on not only a tour of my garden, and also share some of the preservation methods I use to ensure that nothing goes to waste. Ranging from your most basic methods that use simple brines or the convenience of a few appliances, pairing your gardening effort with a few preservation methods just makes good sense. And that gives you a plan that not only fills your plate tonight, but well into the coming weeks and months. So let's get to the garden. Why not start with one of the fastest ways you can preserve your tomatoes for up to a year? This method truly takes less than 1 minute. I've got several compact varieties of cherry tomatoes that are producing about 2.5 to 3 pounds across several of my vertical planters, and I want to harvest them before the skins burst or they just fall off. Plus, harvesting encourages more growth. I love growing cherry tomatoes because they are salad ready, perfect to toss into stir fries and soups, or eat right off the vine without slicing or dicing. Very often, my harvesting basket is a colander that I've grabbed from the kitchen. This bowl is technically a salad spinner, which makes rinsing and cleaning them off that much easier when I get back inside. My tomatoes are doing so well this year. I highly recommend grabbing an herb that you like to pair with tomatoes. For me, it's basil, and this is a miniature leaf compact bush variety that I like to grow. It's called boxwood basil, so I'm dropping a few sprigs of that in my colander too. I really prefer this variety because I think it stands up to summer heat better than full-size varieties and has excellent flavor. Yum! Look at all that fresh goodness. Once inside, I added a vegetable spray to my rinse water and gave them a good spin before I drained the water off. Now it's time to reserve these tomatoes, which takes 10 seconds if you're moving slow. Start by taking a few cloves of garlic and then add them to a quart-sized jar. Then you're going to add 3 tablespoons of unrefined salt, like Redmond's, and about 2 cups of unchlorinated water. I'm using water for my Berkey. Now give things a good stir so that the salt starts to dissolve, and then add 1 or a combination of fresh or dried herbs. The more herbs you add, the more flavor will infuse into your tomatoes. And then you'll start stuffing as many of your cherry tomatoes or full-size tomatoes in your quart-sized jar as you can. Lastly, you've got to make sure that your tomatoes stay submerged under the brine because the fermentation liquid is what does the preserving action. I like to use glass weights and then top with a fermenting lid that burps the jar without any added work on my part. Let your jar ferment at room temperature for 3 to 4 weeks, then keep in a cold, dark place like the fridge or the basement cellar where they'll stay fresh and ready to use for recipes later on for more than 5 to 6 months. Another recipe I like is one that I learned from my college roommate's mom, and it's hands down the fastest way to make a tomato sauce. You add warm olive oil, garlic, and your tomatoes to a pan, and then you're just going to stir in some anchovy paste. Surprising, right? Well, this won't give off a fishy taste and won't be overly salty, but it's just what you need to add a depth of robust flavor and taste that tricks even the most discerning taste buds into thinking you've simmered this pot on the stove all day. I just taste and add more as I go. You'll know when you've added enough, but for a full pan like this, it's roughly 2 tablespoons. Then you add your tomatoes and you're going to cook them until they blister and soften. I'll add more fresh herbs since I'm not in short supply of any of these, along with some fresh pepper. Voila! Your tomato sauce for spaghetti, lasagna, grilled meats, or vegetables is done. Store in a jar and keep in the fridge or freezer. this night, we had a simple pasta dish, and believe it or not, it took longer for the noodles to soften than it did to make this sauce from scratch. Anchovy paste is a go-to ingredient I use this time of year so that I can easily turn a tomato harvest into a savory sauce in minutes. If this is our first time meeting, hi, I'm Cassandra from the blog becomingafarmgirl.com. I'm here to help you build a from-scratch preservation pantry your family will love. I also like to show how you can grow a lot of food in a small space in a way that truly does reduce your reliance on the grocery store. I've got peppers coming out of my ears too, which is why this is another way I've started to use them in my kitchen. These are some cayenne peppers, and I'm going to turn them into a spicy sauce. Once in the kitchen, grab a cast iron skillet and oil it with some baking fat or the oil of your choice. And then you'll slice your peppers lengthwise and add them to a warm oven to soften for just about 20 minutes or until the skins are soft. After they come out of the oven, you'll drizzle them with some olive oil, add a hefty amount of onion and garlic, and stir things to combine so that the flavors start to meld. Oh my, the kitchen smells amazing right now. Then you'll add enough milk to cover your ingredients and add a small portion of cheese. So I had Parmesan on hand, so that's what I used, but any cheese that you also have would work. This helps to create a smooth pourable sauce that doesn't separate. Let this cool, then blend in a blender and return to the pan. Doesn't this pepper sauce just look beautiful? Yours will too. And here I am adding more of the noodles that I had already cooked to this dish. I want to make this more of a soupy blend rather than a thicker sauce, so I used more milk and less cheese, but you can play around with your proportions. Regardless, you'll have a delicious tasting pepper sauce that didn't take all afternoon to make. Top with fresh herbs and you've got a gourmet meal from your garden. I've always either canned, dehydrated, or fermented my peppers, but using them as a sauce has been just as handy. I'm growing my own sugar, also known as stevia, which is cut and come again. Each week I harvest about this much because she's growing just that fast and place directly on my dehydrator trays to dehydrate overnight to crisp the leaves, and then I'll blend it into a powder that I sprinkle in hot or iced tea or baking dishes. I've also got plenty of lemon balm growing, which is also cut and come again, and I'm going to preserve the remainder of what I didn't enjoy fresh this week for tea this fall and winter. And then my scallions are also growing like weeds, so let's trim them down. I've also got some parsley that I want to save, so I'm harvesting some of that too. And then I have just got tons and tons and tons of basil that I can add to my pantry stockpile. This winter, I got a Harvest Right freeze dryer, and these are the trays that I've lined with parchment paper to place everything I've just harvested on. I use my freeze dryer for everything: meats, whole cooked meals, vegetables, and I especially love it for preserving my garden fresh herbs because I know that I can personally see, smell, and taste the difference between dehydrated herbs and freeze-dried herbs, and the freeze-dried ones retain their color, vibrant taste, and aroma much, much more than when I dehydrate them. Between working a full-time job, family commitments, and life, having a host of ways to preserve what grows in my garden or what I glean from my friends' gardens or the market has truly allowed me to store nutritious foods in ways that I can fit into a busy schedule, which is why I think it's ideal to integrate as many preservation methods as you can into your gardening routine. Plus, freeze drying is hands-off and gives you the longest shelf life out of any preservation method. We're talking 20 to 30 years. Sorry it's kind of dark, but we're in my basement now, and if you can tap a screen, you can work a freeze dryer. You just press start to activate the cooling chamber. That takes just 15 minutes, and then you load your trays. After that, you'll close the drain valve and the freezing process starts and will beep to let you know when the built-in sensors have reached the appropriate drying conditions, which are dependent on the quantity and density of your food. So there's no math or measuring on your part required. Once out of the freeze dryer, you can test the doneness by listening to the crispiness of your food. A freeze dryer retains the concentration of flavor and aromatics along with the vibrant color of your ingredients extremely well, and storing them is a cinch. I'll show you that shortly, but I really want you to have a good look at what you'll end up with. You can store your freeze-dried food in Mylar bags or glass jars, which is my preference because I already have so many canning jars on hand. Each time I add to my fresh herb stockpile, knowing that I'll be grabbing these jars over the fall and winter, it's a way that I know my garden will still be providing for me even when the growing season has ended. Plus, before preserving my own herbs, I bought my herbs from the store, and it's true that you never know how long they've already been sitting. So to experience the fresh taste of herbs that are plucked and preserved within hours is 1,000-fold different. I usually just take my hand and crush the herbs down a bit, knowing that over the next few weeks, I'll continue to add to my jars until they're completely filled. If you're curious about the benefits of a freeze dryer or what a more in-depth look at its versatility, I'll link my video sharing multiple things I've preserved with my freeze dryer and how to determine if it's a good fit for you. All right, so here's what I've harvested from just a once a week cutting. Not too bad for a vertical gardener, right? Now, to seal my jars, I keep a food saver top with an aluminum canning jar lid, and I actually just use a manual brake bleeder, yes, like the one you use to remove air bubbles from a car brake system, and I pump until it reaches at least 20 psi. This method costs about $20 for the pump, stores easily, and is less than paying for a electronic vacuum pump, so it's just been my preference. You've just removed all of the air out of your jar and created an airtight seal when you use this method. All right, let's get to this second planter on the right side of my deck, which I used the second tier from the bottom to plant a row of 45-day cabbages. That's right, these cabbages were a compact, fast-growing variety that are perfect for small space and patient gardeners like me to grow. We had a very short spring before summer temps hit, and while the heads get much larger when I grow them in the fall, I still got enough leaves between the exterior ones and the central head to go ahead and harvest. And here I'm just showing you how well the roots grow from my GreenStalk. Okay, let's get to harvesting. I'd say these cabbages aren't too shabby for a gardener that's only growing on a deck. And might I add that my cabbages are not experiencing the same level of pest pressure as my friends in ground garden because growing off of the ground eliminates soil-dwelling pests and increases air circulation. Plus, when it's time to harvest, I'm not bending over on hands and knees. I'm comfortably standing, spinning my planter, and standing in the same spot. Told you my gardening routine was pretty simple. Oh look, here's the last bit of broccoli that I went ahead and harvested. Y'all, homegrown broccoli is so sweet. Yes, I said sweet. It's not at all like what you taste once it hits the stores. So today my harvesting basket was my dress. Let's bring this green goodness inside. You've just seen a glimpse of what my harvesting routine looks like with GreenStalk vertical planters, which I've been using for 7 years now. And if you think that these sturdy, space-saving mobile planters would be a complement to your existing gardening routine, or give you the confidence to finally start gardening without the fuss, you can use my code BeAFarmGirl to take $10 off your order at checkout. After rinsing the leaves, I'm going to roughly chop them because I'm going to toss these greens into the crock pot and let them simmer until they're nice and soft. Okay, let me show you the central head. Again, this would be 3 times as large if the weather hadn't gotten so hot so quickly this year. But hey, that's just how gardening goes. As you can see, from just a single row off of one planter, I've got a bowl full of cabbage building up in the back. Now I'm going to grab a few petite potatoes that I have on hand and I need to use up. I'm going to go ahead and chop them to add to my cabbage soup. And then, of course, I'll add a bit of onion. Next, I'm going to grab my crock pot, plug it in, and then grab my beautiful bowl of greens and potatoes and transfer the contents into the crock pot. And now I'm going to pour in a combination of ham and cornstalk broth that I've canned. And y'all, my goodness, this broth is so amazing, if I do say so myself. And my greens get to soak up all of that flavor for the next few hours. All right, here's what we've got a couple hours later. Garden fresh greens and golden dark pot liquor. Is this a simple meal? Yes, but it's also savory, filling, and nutritious, especially with a couple of added spoonfuls of the pot liquor over top. Even a townhouse gardener can get homegrown goodness. To get more small space gardening inspiration, click on the video on your screen. I'll see you in my kitchen or garden soon. Take care, friends.